Welcome to this module on analyzing data in Azure. We've talked a lot about collecting data and storing it, but once you've done that, it's really important to analyze that data so that you can make sense of it, so you can understand your business, your customers, or your employees. Essentially, whatever that data covers, you want to be able to understand it. We're also going to talk a bit about machine learning, demystify it a little bit, hopefully, but talk about Microsoft's Azure offerings in the machine learning space so you understand what you can do with it on top of the data that you're collecting. And of course, we want to know how to visualize those results. When you analyze data, a lot of the importance comes down to how do you present that data to the end users so they can make sense of it and get the most value and have the most actionable data at their fingertips. Inside of Azure, we've got a couple of different services that might sound familiar if you've worked with data analytics in your data center or with SQL Server. We've got SQL Data Warehouse, and this is a cloud-optimized data warehouse storage that takes advantage of the cloud infrastructure. So again, while we talk about having something in the cloud that's similar to what you have in your data center, in the cloud, we're going to provision the data warehouse and go. We don't have to set up servers, drives, figure out our clustering. We just provision that data warehouse and we get to take advantage of all that hardware and the speed and reliability that comes with it. Additionally, we have analysis services. And again, this is similar to what you may have worked with SQL Server. You can use Visual Studio tools to build your analysis services projects. And you can take that information from the SQL Data Warehouse or other stores. You can manipulate it and create the models that make the most sense for your end users to be able to query and find the data that they need to do their jobs. So those are two core services where you're going to store and analyze data. Stream Analytics takes a different approach in that you want to provide some analysis of data as it gets processed or ingested into the system. So this is real-time data analysis. As data is coming in from your applications, from your IoT devices or sensors, you have telemetry data, you can take time slices of that, chunks of that, as it's streamed through, and do analysis to understand what's going on in your warehouses or in your systems. And this is really optimized for high volume message processing. So the system is tuned for streaming and for being able to process those messages as they're flowing through the system. So the pattern for Stream Analytics is you're going to ingest some data, you're going to analyze it in that stream, and you're going to output some results from that data. So you're going to take that data, do the analysis, and then output some results that you might then use inside your application to make recommendations or decisions for your users. Any conversation about analytics is probably going to involve talking about Azure HD Insight. What this does, it provides you the ability to create clusters to run a variety of open source analytics tools like Apache Spark, Hadoop, Hive, Storm, Kafka, or HBase. And so you create a cluster, decide what kind of cluster it is, and provision that. Again, these are open source tools used for analytics on big data, and Microsoft has created an offering that lets you very simply create a cluster and provision these tools so you don't have to go out and manually set up servers and storage and networking and install these things and get them running. It's all about how quickly you can get to your application and get to doing your data analytics instead of focusing on building out infrastructure for processing big data and taking advantage of the cloud infrastructure to be able to scale these clusters up and down as needed. Azure Databricks is about taking that whole open source concept and focusing on optimizing it for the cloud. So it's a cloud optimized Apache Spark service that's built with all sorts of tooling around it in order to take advantage of the cloud infrastructure. And it's also got deep integration with lots of Azure services, including Active Directory for your identity, for example, and role-based access control, so that this is a cloud-first approach to using Apache Spark. So while the HD Insight allows you to create clusters of a variety of different tools, Databricks is a very focused offering. And in working closely with the folks around those open source frameworks, making it the best experience possible and the easiest to get up and running and integrate with your other Azure solutions. More recently, as people have been thinking about analytics or looking at data and making sense of it, machine learning has become a big part of that. And Microsoft's approach to machine learning is to provide opportunities for you to start at all different levels. So if you're a beginner, being able to come in and create a machine learning model very quickly with lots of assistance and guidance about what kinds of algorithms to use, for example. But if you're a data scientist coming in, also having all sorts of tooling that allows you to get deep into programming languages and selecting your own algorithms and plugging those in. So with machine learning, you're going to build and train models. That means you're going to take information that you have on hand, data that you want to be able to answer questions from, and you're going to build models that look at that data and can create results for you. And you then train them over sets of data so that you see the right kinds of answers. Once you have those machine learning models, you're able to deploy those and manage those right from within the machine learning system with a DevOps experience so that you get full control of rolling out those changes and rolling out those updates to your models, and being able to use them from your applications to take advantage of the machine learning and answer those questions inside your application. If you're not ready to start with machine learning and building all those models, Cognitive Services is a great set of services that might be a first step for you. I like to think of this as prepackaged machine learning. You've got a set of different services around looking at data and making decisions, around speech, so maybe text to audio or audio to written text, and language. You can detect things like sentiment. The Cognitive Services vision or computer vision allows you to create thumbnails or look for certain things or people inside of images. And a whole set of search services based around the Bing search, where you can search for different kinds of entities using these APIs. So you can go out, instead of having to build a model and create a whole set of algorithms, Microsoft has done that work for you, and you can go out and take advantage of these services by provisioning Cognitive Services in your subscription and start using the Vision API right away, sending images over and getting back results, or using the language service to send text over and get sentiment analysis right off the bat. So this is a great stepping stone and starting point into the machine learning services that are available. All these different tools are all about analyzing that data and finding information, but you're going to want to show that data to your users, and that's where Power BI comes into play. Power BI has a variety of different tools and offerings that you can take advantage of, from a desktop client that you can download to the Power BI embedded that lets you embed rich charts and analysis visuals into your application. So once you've got that analysis done, take a look at the different offerings in Power BI for internal use in your enterprise, for mobile, for embedding in your application, to be able to provide those visualizations to key players that need to see it. I started this course by promising to simplify things, and you're probably thinking, you just laid out a ton of different resources for me to do analytics. Now I have so many options. And that's true, and that's one of the benefits of Azure, is that you're going to have the right tools for each of those scenarios. But if you're feeling overwhelmed and feeling like you don't know how to pull all that together, that's where Azure Synapse comes in. The goal of Azure Synapse Analytics is to help you have one place to go to manage things like SQL Data Warehouse or the Databricks. So different storage, different analytics tools that come together here. All the different storage you have, whether that's storage in blob containers or data lakes, when you've got files or you've got structured data, all of that storage can be pulled in through Azure Synapse. And it pulls together tools for ETL or data movement, extract, transform, and load. So you don't have to go have a separate tool for each of these different pieces to ingest data, to process that data through these different pipelines. And it pulls together machine learning and other services that you're going to use for analysis. This tool doesn't replace all the other things that we've talked about, but it helps unify them all into a workspace where you can have a single point to go in and manage the storage, movement, and the analytics of your data. Let's take a look at a couple of simple examples that'll help you put the pieces together here. One is a very basic example where we go back to our data factory that we talked about in the previous module to extract data from a variety of sources, and we can load those into our SQL data warehouse. It's a pretty common pattern that you'll see. And then you may plug in analysis services on top of that to create some models that make sense for your users. And of course, anywhere in here, we can start plugging in Power BI. But it'd probably make the most sense after we've done the analysis services, pulled that data into a model, and display it visually to the users. Another example, we can combine stream analytics and machine learning. So you might use the event hubs, again, that we talked about for ingesting lots and lots of data. You could also use IoT hubs or Kafka or other things to pull data in. And we can then pass that through our stream analytics to answer some questions, to watch for specific data. As part of that, our stream analytics can tie into a machine learning model. So it could use that information in analyzing the data, use what we've learned through training the model to get those results that you need. And then we output that into a data store. Here I've represented that as an Azure Cosmos DB that we might use inside our application. You could put it into data lake storage, you could put it into a SQL server, or any kind of data store that made sense so that your application can now consume the results of that analysis done in stream analytics and the machine learning models. We've looked at a number of different tools for providing analytics, and analytics become really important because the more and more data we collect, the more we need to make sense of it. You need to be able to order it and manage it in a way that users can consume it. When there's so much data, being able to make sense of it becomes the biggest challenge. In Azure, we've got data warehousing and analytics tools, all built to handle and take advantage of cloud scale. So built to be easily provisioned, to scale automatically, to be reliable and resilient. And the tooling that we have supports those big data workloads, being able to analyze huge amounts of data and whittle it down to the key pieces of information that are going to be the most value to the people looking at that information, or to the systems that are going to use that information to become smarter and give your end users better results. And I want to point out that Microsoft has really embraced that open source tooling. So HD Insight, Databricks, this is all about embracing that open source analytics tooling, not trying to replace it, and building a cloud infrastructure that gets you up and running with it that much quicker. Now that we've looked at data from the point of storing and processing in the last module and analyzing it in this module, we're going to move on in the next module to integration and understanding how we connect our systems together to share data and logic.